To many of us on the social media, we would always see this thing they said was posted on the door of one university in South Africa. And the bottom line in all that summary is if you want your people to be great, if you want to have a prosperous nation, you will need to pay attention, not just to education, but to quality education. President Ahmed Tinubu made a promise that resonates so very widely. He says that no Nigerian child will be excluded from quality education. And again, an education that prepares the girl and the woman to lead positive impacts within their communities. But you see, there's, for me, over the years in Nigeria, there's need to have this conversation that a lot of people treat education as an end in itself. In other words, I could go to school, I could learn to speak English, particularly because if you look at the history of education, the white people taught us to be able to do certain things. So education to a great extent has been dependent. But then if you look at functional, holistic education, education prepares you to be a functioning, fully integrated, productive member of your community. Nigerian policy on education. So we're talking about an egalitarian nation. We're talking about a people who are productive. We're talking about, and so if you look at it, and I think that is part of what I am hopeful we would see in the next years to build upon. That every policy His Excellency had made in his manifesto, for me, they all stop in education. One, look at the statistics of Nigeria. Predominant population of Nigeria are young adults, less than 30 years. And then increasingly, if you take that predominant position, look at another statistics the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has put out. Majority of Nigerians are not well educated. In the basic terms, they cannot read and write. And so in the past and almost presently, most Nigerians still have the conception. If I teach you to read and write, your problem is solved. Far from it, your problem is not solved. Your basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter are still there. So if the basic need of man conceptually is food, clothing, and shelter, it means all efforts of government reduces into how every average Nigerian should do that. Now, if I have a population of Nigerian people who are predominantly young, unskilled, what is the whole essence of education? What is the whole essence of productivity? That I have enough knowledge and enough skills to survive and function as an individual. So if you look at that, it means that every Nigeria belongs to the education sector. If you look at that again, another statement of fact is that education is multidisciplinary. That is why education gives birth to every other profession. And in recent time, you notice that that has been an issue. We could be very taken over with the learning facilities. Another promise His Excellency made. Learning environments will be addressed. And so in recent time, we begin to see at the tertiary education, there's a lot of ongoing agitations and strike. We said, okay, teachers will be available. Well, let's leave the debate about the quality and the number of teachers. But the question again that comes to the table is the remuneration of teachers. The last government hinted at that. There's going to be pay packages that make teaching profession more appealing to the average Nigerian. And just recently, JAM told us the population of Nigerians that want to go into the teaching profession, again, has a bit of a comma. So I think the promises of His Excellency are clear. But how do we deliver on the promise? To deliver on that promise means every facet of the Nigeria education should pay attention to education. We just listen to our Greek. When you look at food production, if most of my people are supposed to be in school, whatever the type of school you call it, basic education, secondary education, tertiary education, whether they are technical or non-technical, all they do in school is to acquire skills and competencies that should address all our human capital needs in as a country. At the same time, would the schools themselves become just dumping grounds for everything? Or schools themselves should generate revenue for itself? Now, when you say that at the other side, it gives a different connotation. Because some would reinterpret that to mean government should no longer fund education because education should do that. But if you look at the national policy on education, it says that, now, let's agree that schools learn. And then if schools learn, you have an apprenticeship system that goes on in school. It means in school, at the basic conceptual one, I'm a home economics teacher. And the building disciplinary areas for home economics is garments making. And then I talk about cosmetology. I talk about food production, right? Food preparation and baking and the rest of them. And even agricultural science is a bit embedded into a bit of what we do. It means by Nigeria law, when a child finishes GSS 3 at the age of 15, the child should have functional skills for livelihood. It means that child should be able to make garments for you. That child should be able to do a bit of masonry. But the artisan crafts in Nigeria have been dead. So when we talk about the need to pay more attention to education, it goes beyond just simply saying increase the budget, but begin to look. That's why I'm happy we're talking about a result-based output. That it means this government is then saying, how many functioning learning centers do we have? Not in terms of I build a simple classroom and I give it to a community. How many workshops do they have? And then you see every emphasis you are going to make on SMEs actually should go to the school. It will mean that with all the land size and the infrastructure in schools and workshop, the productivity of those schools, I think it is that one we are needing to see. That it's okay, we are paying a lot of attention to SMEs like the government is doing. But the intersectoral collaboration would mean that everybody begin to adopt the community existing facility. It's good investment for you to look at where you have assets.
Okay.
Every community has a school. And does every community have a workshop? Does every school has a farm? Does every young adult acquire all those skills? Do we incentivize them? And I give a practical one. Last year, the UNESCO supported for our NGO what we call the Pilot School Sewing Championship. And before that time, garment making in schools is not one of the home economics thing. Usually, when you talk of home economics, everybody talk of puff puff and chin chin. And then when you talk of women education, everybody talk about soap making. But then garment making becomes a bit more technical. That is a multiple trillion-dollar thing in the world, right? Industry. And countries like India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh make a whole lot of money. And most times when you talk of garments making or fashion, our attention simply goes out to people who are school dropouts. Our attention goes out to people who have fashion houses. But why didn't we think that the Nigerian students should do that? And so in the FCT, UNESCO supported that last year. And 1,096 young people between the age of 12 and 20 took part of that. Increasingly, after that incentive, thanks to Federal Ministry of Education and NASENI and the collaborating practice, you find that most schools in the FCT are now getting sewing machines.